So namaste and good evening. It's Philip Wade here from North Yorkshire, broadcasting from the Universal Studio. So welcome everybody wherever you're watching from. We're broadcasting here live tonight from the Endless Peace and Love group, which is dedicated to spiritual self-realization. Tonight's stream is dedicated to the subject I've called Beyond Belief. Beyond Belief. And what I'd like to do is, we'll be doing a meditation in a little while, but I'll share some insights first around why belief in that which you are not is the biggest block to spiritual self-realization. And if you just sort of hold that as an awareness for the moment, that belief in that which you are not is the biggest and indeed really only fundamental block to spiritual self-realization. And I'll be exploring that in greater depth as we go on. So I want to start with another insight as well, and it's this: truth, as in ultimate truth, that which is realized, is a realization. It's not a belief. So truth is a realization and it's not a belief. And that's really why I'm entitling this stream as Beyond Belief, or I could say Before Belief also. And what I want to do is kind of set out a little story and actually some real life examples of this, which kind of demonstrate the limitations and issues that can arise with belief. And for me, this little inquiry actually started, I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but I know I was still at junior school, so possibly 8, 9, 10, something like that. In those days, I was brought up in the Catholic faith. It's long since left that behind. But I remember a lot of the teaching in the 60s, it was then, was very kind of force-fed upon you. And interestingly, where we lived, and I lived in Manchester, North Manchester, so we were a Catholic family. We had Irish Catholic families either side of us, and there were quite a number of those on our road, as well as friends who went to the Church of England and also non-denominational groups, all in that same, all in the streets around us, and we lived in a terraced house there. And this, of course, in a time in the early 60s and 70s, was at the time of the so-called Troubles in Northern Ireland. And because we had so many Irish Catholic families either side of us, it was perhaps very, very kind of in our consciousness than it, perhaps more than it might otherwise have been, although it was all over the news in those days. And I remember, having been brought up in this Catholic faith, one of the things that was said quite a lot in those days was that this faith I was being brought up in was the one true faith. That was what was said. It was the one true faith. And it didn't make much sense to my 8, 9, 10-year-old brain, because my immediate question was, well, if this is the one true faith, and I knew that there were millions and millions and indeed billions of other people who weren't brought up in that faith, what about them then? It didn't seem to make such much sense, and that was a very strong teaching that was being pushed. And I ended up, I actually had what I would now call an awareness experiment at that age. I didn't tell anybody else about it. It was just sort of in my own awareness. And because it was probably brought about at least in part by the fact that we had Irish Catholic families either side of us. And I remember the awareness experiment went like this. Let's say 2 babies were born in a hospital that was very close to the border, and one was born to a Catholic family and one was born to a Protestant family. So either side of the kind of divide, so to speak, in Ireland. And the awareness experiment went like this. If by accident, and I obviously do mean by accident, the babies got swapped in the ward, and somehow the baby that was born to the Catholic family actually went home with the Protestant family, and vice versa, the baby that was born to the Protestant family went home to the Catholic family. And they were brought up like that without anybody having realised or known. And my question inside was, would the environment in which those people were brought up, those babies were brought up, would it result in the baby that was supposed to have been born and brought up in the Catholic family and actually ended up in the Protestant, and vice versa, being indoctrinated, being come to hold the belief sets and some of their hatred towards the others, even though it had been born originally, let's say, to either the Catholic or the Protestant, depending on which it was. And it seemed to me intuitive that this indeed was a possibility, that the babies would be conditioned into the environments that they were brought up in. I obviously had no proof of that, and I didn't know about things like environmental conditioning, and I wouldn't have used those words then. But it struck me fairly obvious that this indeed was a possibility, and actually taking that further, this continuation of this belief sets being imprinted from previous ages, previous generations, was in fact really potentially at root of the troubles that had been going on really for a long time, much prior to the 1960s, right back to the origination of those. Now obviously, as I say, at 9-10 years old, didn't have any proof that that would in fact be the case, but it seemed highly probable. And then some considerable years ago, many years after I'd left all that behind and that conditioning behind, I actually saw, and I was amazed and blessed to see this, an actual example of this that was slightly different circumstances but fitted the awareness or thought experiment beautifully. And it's a really quite sad story in a way, but it's very illustrative and very important to understand. And you may have heard, some of you may have heard of what the story I'm about to share, because it relates to some identical twins. They were called Oscar and Jack. Now, Oscar and Jack's parents, they were born in Trinidad in the Caribbean in 1934 it was. And the father was of a Jewish background and the mother was of a Roman Catholic background. And they were born in Trinidad, so about 5 years before the Second World War started. Now, unfortunately, the marriage broke down and the parents separated, and one of the identical twins was brought up in a fairly liberal but still Jewish type background in Trinidad, and I think also another country near South America, which one escapes me, I'm not sure. So pretty liberal type upbringing. And the other was taken back by the mother to Germany, where she originated from, and was brought up in the Catholic faith in what was then very quickly to become Nazi Germany. And it wasn't until after the Second World War had come to an end, when the twins were about 12, so 1946-ish, that the twin in Trinidad wrote to the twin in Germany to make contact. And when he did this, because there'd been no contact prior to that, when he did that, he included a photograph of himself. And he was in I think it was the Scouts. And in the photographing, as well as himself, were some other boys of his age. And some of those boys were of mixed race background, of African extraction. So they had dark skin, obviously. And he included this photograph of himself to the brother in Germany. The brother in Germany, Oscar, received the letter and was absolutely, in his own words now, sort of horrified, shocked. I can't remember the precise words he used, but essentially he was horrified and shocked that it could be possibly, conceivably, his own identical twin brother could be seen being photographed with people of this mixed race background. He couldn't believe that it was possible. And he went on to say later, and there's a documentary about these two people, you can look it up, it's Oscar and Jack. Oscar Storr and Jack Youth. And he went on to say in this documentary, or the footage that I saw, that we believed everything the Nazis taught us, and we suppressed the rest. Eventually, the twins came to meet up. I think it was in adult life by this time. But never in all of their remaining lives did they spend much time together. And there wasn't really a lot of love between them, most unfortunate and most sad. And they couldn't discuss subjects like religion, politics, and so forth, because there was always huge disagreements as a result of the environments and separate environments and conditioning that they were brought up in. And in fact, the twin in Germany had been included and part of what was, I'm sure you've heard of this, the Hitler Youth. So quite a lot of indoctrination would have gone on there. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the twin in Trinidad and the other country he was brought up hadn't had any conditioning of his own. There probably would have been. But the thing is, we were talking about identical twins. And one of the most remarkable things, even though these people had lived apart for a very long time, they still looked identical and had physical traits and very similar clothes choices, even though they'd brought up in completely separate parts of the world. When they met, they were wearing, can you believe, the same jackets. They both had very similar traits in how they kind of lived their lives, except their belief systems were poles apart. Now, we all know what happened with the belief systems with Nazi Germany, and it turned out, unfortunately, that most of the father's family, which was of Jewish extraction, remember, was absolutely decimated by the Holocaust that took place in the Second World War. And so here was a family divided, but not only by distance, but by belief systems, and really great suffering took place, really, and actually they couldn't really find a deep connection. And I think I'm right in saying they probably only spent about a month or 2 months together in their later lives. This, to me, was a very, very instructive story and a great confirmation of the awareness experiment that had taken place when I was 9-10 years old. And it's a clear demonstration, as clear as I feel it can get sometimes, as to just what can happen with the environment and the belief systems that we're brought up in. And it turns out that beliefs actually limit us and they block us from the realization of our truth. And the fundamental flawed belief as far as spiritual self-realization is concerned is the belief that all you are is the body-mind experience. And this single belief and every other belief that emerges in life is actually, it turns out, a subset of this, because that single belief is a belief in separation from that which you truly are, which is infinite awareness or infinite consciousness. And this is also why, when I'm sharing the message, I always make the point of saying, actually, you don't need to believe a single word I say, because truth is a realization, not a belief. For as the true essence or true nature is realized, it is seen that one has always been this, always will be this, and that this that I'm talking about is infinite awareness or infinite consciousness or infinite silence. And thus it is both beyond and before belief. And that's also why belief is not necessary. This field of consciousness is infinite, and belief ultimately is something that is outside of your experience. Otherwise you wouldn't need the energy of belief. And as the nature of the self is realized, it becomes self-evident, big S, non-personal, infinite awareness or infinite silence. So this story of Oscar and Jack, whilst incredibly sad at one level, is also highly instructive, and in my own experience was a confirmation of an awareness that had emerged in me. And I'm sure we all have this in one way or another in childhood. It may not be the same kind of thought experiment that I had, but as young children, before we're deeply conditioned into belief systems that we acquire from, whether it be family, religion, local communities, national community, whatever it happens to be, before those are impressed upon us and we become our beliefs, before all of that, there's a purity in children. I'm sure we've all seen young children that are unconditioned. They don't take account of things like the adults would do in the world. And it is for these reasons why belief is both a limiting thing and also a fundamental block to the realization of the self. And sometimes I'll go as far as saying, just to make light of this, truth is unbelievable. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't require belief. It simply is realized. Oh my gosh, I am this being, the infinite silence, or the infinite awareness, or infinite consciousness. So I hope that you found that little story there instructive. And what that then points us towards is being open. If we seek peace, seek the realization of the self, then very much core to it is being willing to look beyond and before the beliefs that are, whether they are conscious or unconscious, that we have taken on board in our lives. And sometimes life will always present us with the opportunities to do that. What is required then is a willingness and an openness to face that. And if we're prepared to do that, then through that same awareness, the grace of that awareness, that infinite consciousness that we are, we can gradually dissolve and let go of, leave behind all that we are not. So I trust that's been a useful story and useful insight. I can only see comments live on the Endless Peace and Love group, so if there are any questions or comments elsewhere, we'll pick up on that later. So that is the story about belief and moving beyond belief or before belief. And what I'll do now is just a little exercise. I did this on the last live stream, but because it was quite noisy, some people may not have heard it. So let's just do it again, and I'm probably going to repeat it again tomorrow night, because it's a spiritual practice that can be repeated many times to help you with the seeing of who you really are. So it's a very simple practice, and it's a way of stepping out of mind and beliefs. So the first part, if you want to just close your eyes for a moment, just simply close your eyes. And as your eyes are closed, just ask this question inside. Who am I? Who am I? And if anybody wants to write on the comments what comes to them, you can open your eyes now. Feel free to do so. And because it's not live, I'm not with a live group of people. Normally I go around and ask people what they get. So I'll share with you, in the absence of any comments that I can see, what typically comes up with. There's usually some people that will go immediately to identity. So they may say man, woman, father, whatever. It may be that they relate their role, their background, many things connected with typical things, the way in which we identify ourselves, through to an opening which can arise if there's less identification with the mind, and people might start to say some other words that might be things like light or energy or something like that. To then go to the second part of the exercise, which is equally simple, but just takes it a little bit further. So closing our eyes again. And just asking again the question, this time, who am I without memory? Who am I without memory? And just be with that for a moment. Who am I without Good. And then you can open your eyes again. And if anybody wants to share what they got with that, again, you can put them in the comments. I can't see anything coming up at the moment, but I'll share with you what then starts to come up, because basically what we've done without memory part of it is taken mind and beliefs are central to mind out of the equation. And people start to use words like love, void, silence, stillness, awareness. Now these are clearer and deeper pointings to that which you truly are, because we've suddenly taken minds out of the equation. And mind, by the way, a simple metaphor for mind is thoughts plus belief equals mind. So taking without memory, which is central to mind, and belief is central to mind, out of the equation, we start to get an opening to a deeper seeing. Now you can use this spiritual practice like a simple meditation anywhere really, anytime, any place, anywhere, especially if you're kind of in a busyness of mind mode and are looking for stillness. You can simply stop where you are, pause, and particularly ask that second question, who am I, without memory. And what this will do is step you out of mind more quickly into a space of stillness. And you can use that as a regular practice, and the more familiar you become with that as a practice, the more effective and the quicker that stillness and that awareness will come. It might also bring with it, by the way, awarenesses of things that you are holding within your emotional body that stems from beliefs, that stems from mind, for you to face and dissolve. And there's a whole live stream called Live Stream 11 that's free on my YouTube channel that addresses that part of it. So that's a very simple and powerful spiritual exercise. It's like a mini meditation that can step you out of beliefs, minds, into a deeper space very, very quickly. I can't overstate the importance and power of that one. So I trust this is all making some kind of sense. As I say, it's a little tricky without getting direct feedback. So I think I'm going to leave it at that now and just summarize to say truth is a realization, not a belief. Truth is a realization, not a belief. And this will become evident as the nature of the self is realized. And thus, the really only and fundamental block to the realization of peace, to the realization of self, the self as infinite awareness, is the belief in the case of mistaken identity. And every other belief is simply a subset of that one flawed belief. And this makes the whole process very simple. This awareness is very powerful. If you keep coming back to this awareness as part of your spiritual practice, then one can move through the layers of misunderstanding and beliefs, conditioning, actually a lot more quickly. So just be with that for a moment. I'm just going to put some music on for just a moment and then I'll go to the meditation. So please just enjoy this harp track. It's called Seeking, and we'll start the meditation in about a minute's time. Good. So let's get ready for the meditation. Whether you're going to sit down or lie down. And we'll do about 15-20 minutes meditation. And just gently close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just become aware of the various phenomena in your body. Breath, any emotions, feelings, sensations. Just simply and silently observing, just like you're watching a movie from the inside, without any judgment of what's here now. And as you continue to watch, notice the different phenomena, accepting what's here now. Just be open from your heart to the experience of spheres of light. That's spheres of light, just being open, nothing you need to do. Open from your heart to spheres of light. This energy of spheres of light is the same as the pure, universal state. I the infinite I am, or pure being, just resting attention on this I amness. And as this I amness is seen or witnessed, know that it is so from the deeper awareness that is the silent witness in infinite silence. Tension merges with this silent witnessing that sees the state I am. And this silent witness itself is dissolving or melting, just like some ice in an ocean of water, becoming one with the water. And the water is like an ocean of infinite silence, infinite stillness, pure presence, deeper and deeper dissolving completely, becoming one with this stillness, this silence, this awareness. Be still and know. Just for now, being open to this in silence. We trust. Just for now, being open to this in silence, you will realize your truth. In truth, you will realize you are silence, infinite silence, Everything dissolves in the universal and loving solvent of silence. Be still and know this rarefied atmosphere of silence. Always present, always here now. Untouched, unmoved, unblemished, infinite silence, infinite awareness. Be still and know. Nothing more important than this right now. The trust in the silence becomes the knowing, the realizing. All I truly know is silence. This stillness, isness, radiating from the very heart of silence, touching every cell of your being, transforming, transmuting. The power of silence rests here within the inner infinite dimensions now. Be still and know. continuing to rest in this as this ocean of awareness, of infinite silence. Just let the harp transport you deeper, for it is said that music is the silence between the notes. And just embrace this for a minute or so. In a moment, I'll bring the harp to a close, just keeping your eyes closed for a moment, resting in this and as this space of awareness, knowing it is always present, no matter what. And in a moment, I'll ring the singing bowl. Or tingsha bells 3 times. And as the sound of the tingsha bells gently fade away, aware of your body, the chair you're sat on, or whatever you may be lay on, aware of the space, and just gently, whenever the moment is right for you, opening your eyes. Namaste. 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 Thank you for joining us. And during that brief pause of music, I managed to see a few people on one of the watch parties that made some comments. I saw one saying, "I am truth one with all." Indeed, one is that. And this body is something that you have, but it is not that which you are. And there was another one saying, I am everything and no thing. And this is also accurate pointing. All of it and none of it. Just awareness. Just this.